Oh my God, darling. I had no idea I hit you so hard. How bad is it? 7 stitches, Julie. What did you even expect when you hit me on the back of the head with that heavy lamp? You could have killed me. If I had expected Julie to show remorse, I would have been disappointed. She stared at me, raising her chin, with a challenge in her eyes. Well, what did you expect from me when I came home early and found you in our bed, in our bed, having sex with this woman? I forced myself to look into the eyes of the woman I had so cruelly betrayed. Her eyes reflected many emotions. I saw challenge, anger, shock, and confusion, all fighting for dominance on one face. The call was gone for a moment, and a tear rolled down the cheeks of the woman I had loved more than my own life for 15 years. I felt I had to remain silent in front of her, and I steeled myself to face her justified anger. Who was that? Karen. What, your new secretary? The one you told me less than a month ago was, and I quote, ordinary? I didn't deny that I lied to my wife. I lied. Through teeth. My gaze returned to the wooden surface between us. The hoarseness in her voice at her next words made it clear that Julie was holding back sobs. How old is she? Yesterday she turned 28. Do you know when her birthday is? There was clearly shock and pain in her voice, and I chose to remain silent. There's no point in making her feel worse. Oh my God! So what did I witness? A 39-year-old man giving a birthday present to a psycho bitch with daddy issues? And again, I chose to remain silent. What was the point of telling her that Karen had been quietly but persistently stalking her boss, me, shortly after she was hired? Ever since my trusty old secretary June retired 6 months ago, it was June who interviewed and ultimately recommended Karen. Her flirting was so subtle that naive old me didn't even notice anything. A couple of weeks ago, Karen brought this to my attention so that I could finally see all the episodes and moments from a new perspective. And how long does this last? That was the first time, Julie, honestly. Julie looked at me critically. I stared back at her, not afraid of being caught in a lie. Yesterday, Karen and I physically crossed the line for the first time. How unlucky are Karen and I? We had just taken off our clothes and were rubbing against each other as awkwardly as only two people who are nervous and unfamiliar with each other's bodies can when I heard my wife squeal just before the lights went out. One moment, I was in Julie and I's marital bed with frantic excitement, and the next, I was in an uncomfortable hospital bed with nothing but excitement, unless it was what you call a terrible headache. Julie's eyes searched mine for the truth. I did her the courtesy of holding eye contact until she was satisfied. I noticed the moment when she admitted that I was being honest, when the anger quickly disappeared, to be replaced by what? Uncertainty, a feeling that must almost automatically arise in every betrayed spouse. You just thought you knew your spouse, your world, and, to some extent, your future. The next moment the ground is cut out from under your feet, and nothing will ever be the way you thought. The word quicksand comes to mind. Anything but a solid foundation, more like a whole pile of crap into which you fall and drown. Questions immediately arise. What did I do wrong? How inadequate was I? What did I do wrong? These feelings must have been crushing her, and I was the reason for it. The questions tormenting her are also my fault. I let her do the talking. The apology that I thought needed to be made to her would follow later. I know I've been bitchy for months, Steve, sullen and distant from you and the children, but it was because of the upcoming promotion at work. You knew it. Oh, I knew everything perfectly well. Julie and 3 of her co-workers were battling each other, competing for the same job opening, a major promotion. The remaining 3 were unmarried and had no children. Julie explained that her new position would not have as regular work hours as her current position. One would expect her to stay for half an hour, or until half the night, when the need to meet a deadline arises. She wanted to impress the manager and show him that being a wife and mother wouldn't get in the way, even though I indicated that it would. Stubborn Julie, of course, could not come to terms with this. Instead, she threw herself into impressing her boss, no matter the damage it did to her relationship with me and her children. Julie's new normal now was to stay at work for an hour or 2, stumble home to eat whatever I had cooked, and then readier to the office to do homework until the kids went to bed. Hell, quite often I fell asleep before she finished. On Saturdays, Julie often either went to the office or worked from home, which meant that every Sunday she needed to rest, and she was as grumpy as a cat sitting on a wire brush. If all 4 hopeful applicants worked as hard as Julie, the boss got a ton of work done for free. I know I neglected you and the children, Steve. I know that other than a few times of quick sex when you harassed me, we hadn't been, intimate for a while, but that was going to end soon, you knew that. The increase will be announced at the end of the month. If I get this position, I will only have to return to work a couple of times a week and travel from time to time. If I don't get it, I'll tell Mark where he can put his fucking work. With your thriving business, I can afford to spend my time looking for something else. There was silence again, and we stared at each other for a moment that seemed to last more hours than seconds. All this time, Julie squeezed both my hands in hers. After breaking eye contact, she looked over my shoulder and let go of my hands as if they had burned her, quickly placing hers back on her lap under the table. I was briefly distracted by my throbbing headache and unconsciously reached out and felt the bandage on my head. I simultaneously wanted it to be wrapped tighter and looser. Anything to ease the pain. Was I really so careless that I pushed you into the arms of another? I said nothing. I have already tried and failed to reconcile my recent behavior with the belief system I have held since I was old enough to make my own judgments. There is no excuse for betraying those who deserve your trust. Julie's thoughts and emotions were obviously racing back and forth, judging by the look on her face. She was a woman who had been betrayed, with all the pain, uncertainty, and anger that inevitably followed. Silence fell between us. Do you have any idea how I feel, Steve? Coming home early to what was supposed to be the safe haven of my home, into the comforting arms of my husband, only to find him in my bed with his fucking secretary. I mean, he's too cheap to shell out for a cheap motel room and too insensitive to fuck a whore in any other room in the house. You should have destroyed our sanctuary with your disgusting behavior. Your betrayal. You know, I'll never sleep in this bed again, right? I just kept a neutral expression and lowered my eyes. I knew tears were flowing from Julie's eyes again by her sobbing and the roughness of her voice. It's not fair, Steve. How can I compete with her? I saw that her breasts were larger than mine. You always told me that mine was fine. Remember what you always told me when we were newlyweds? Is anything larger than what fits in your hand overkill? You lied? Did you want to hold some other people's 4s in your hands? Are you bored with my 2s? Or was it her tight little belly? Yes, I saw him too, when she jumped off the bed so that I wouldn't hit you with the lamp again. What was that shit she used to pin me down while she called the police? I was going to say Krav Maga, a mixture of boxing, martial arts, and street fighting, developed by the Israeli Defense Forces. Karen is an expert. It's the same fighting technique that Matt Damon uses in all the Jason Bourne films. That's why she wasn't afraid. You after you knocked me out. But Julie was on a roll. Yes, fit and slender, not like me, right? My belly is soft after carrying your children. I know I've gained a little weight lately. I wasn't eating right and was too tired to go to the gym. I'll fix it all when this is all over. Julia stopped, breathing heavily. I was wondering whether to defend myself at this moment. Should I tell her that she interrupted Karen and I before I actually came in, so to speak? I decided not to do this. We were both naked, and the intention was certainly as good or bad as the action in my mind. I decided to let Julie vent her anger until she was done. Perhaps it would be some consolation for her to know that she was wrong. Nothing she mentioned about her appearance compared to Karen's appearance influenced my decision to sleep with Karen, even though she was right. Karen truly had all the virtues that my wife expressed. This relationship, our relationship, is now unbalanced. You have no idea what the shit I saw yesterday does to a person. How it crushes the soul and destroys the ego. How painful. It's worse than being stabbed to death. Until you feel exactly what I feel, our relationship will go nowhere. So here's what needs to happen. I'm going to pick up some Jungstud and fuck him in our bed. I don't care who it is, just as much as I don't care if he's younger than you, if he's thinner than you, if he can last longer. And guess what? You'll sit there damn calmly and watch him fuck me. I will continue to do this until I decide that you have experienced exactly the same pain as me. If you don't agree to this, I will file for divorce and take everything you have from you, and maybe you will be lucky enough to see your precious children a couple of days every 2 weeks. How does it feel to be attacked by someone you love, an asshole? She stopped, breathing heavily. The shrew that my loving wife has become in recent months has indeed returned. Saliva flew as her fear and self-doubt turned to rage. Realizing that in her anger she was abandoning her moral principles with her unilateral decisions, she forced herself to calm down again. I can't believe you made our bed so dirty, Steve. What do you say? After I get my revenge, when you really understand how devastated I am, we go out and buy a new mattress, huh? This time she clearly wanted me to contribute to the conversation. I debated starting with, yes, I know what it's like to be attacked by someone you love, and I have the stitches to prove it. But it was too cheap. She left me so many options. Where were you going to fuck Mark, Julie? My wife's hands quickly hit the bottom edge of the table, trying to reach her chin before it hit the tabletop. What? It's not a difficult question, Julie. Your boss, Mark, the man who was right behind you when you walked into our bedroom yesterday. Where were you going to fuck him this time? In our bed, as you usually do? Tell me, whose idea was this? Hi? Did he enjoy the thought of fucking you in the bed we shared? Or was it you? Was it your idea to humiliate me? To know that I slept on the bed that you desecrated with another man? Julie's mouth opened and closed like a guppy fish on steroids. You don't have to show me what it's like to witness someone you've loved and trusted for years stab you in the back. This moment came for me when one day I left work early when I felt sick. You should be able to remember the exact date, unless you were too focused on getting that promotion. What was your logic, Julie? I may not have all the natural advantages of my competitors, but I can show him that this mature woman can give him what they can't. And before you ask, yes, I know what it's like to see your partner with someone younger, thinner, and from what you said I overheard when I got to the bedroom. What was that? Oh yeah, fuck me with that huge manhood, Daddy. I guess he's, more blessed than I am. Now it was my turn to stop and breathe heavily, anger burning and white-hot. What I felt that day, and while watching subsequent recordings, still hasn't cooled down. It didn't take long to ignite the flames of rage. At least the anger masked the pain. The slightest thought of Julie's betrayal was like rubbing salt on an open wound. Damn it. Feel it. Karen's reaction when I confided in her in a moment of pain was outrage. When I then showed her the notes, her reaction was pretty much the same as mine. I was touched that she was angry and offended on my behalf. The fact that she was happy that she was finally able to admit her interest in developing a relationship with me calmed my ego tremendously. When did you become so stupid, Julie? Don't you think the girls in your office saw what you were doing? Heck, Julie, 2 of the other contenders I know of have also been in Mark's bed within the last 6 weeks. His wife can now get the recordings of the 3 of you at any time. For the record, Karen and I were only close enough yesterday to teach you a little lesson, but I'm sure we'll change that as soon as we can. She's home now, meeting Jen and Lauren. They were getting along great when I left. They've been starving for female attention since you pulled away so emotionally. Karen wants kids. They want an engaged mother. In my opinion, everyone wins. I saw Julie's eyes practically rolling around at everything I said. The sight was not pleasant. For old time's sake, I waited and said nothing. But Steve, I did it just for us. This raise brings in an extra $20,000 a year. Think what this could do for us. I don't have to think, Julie. I saw what it does for us. It made you a vixen, difficult to live with, and turned you into a slut. And it destroyed our house. With the first confirmation that her decisions were threatening her family, Julie's hands emerged from under the table and reached for mine, squeezing them tightly. The guard who was watching the visitors in the holding cells approached and spoke loudly. "No physical contact. I let you get away with it once, Mrs. Brown. Don't push your luck. Remove your hands, or you will be immediately returned to your cell." Julie looked down at her orange jumpsuit as if she had just remembered where she was. She looked at me pleadingly. "Get me out of here, please, Steve." "What? And not give Karen the opportunity to meet our children?" "But I'm your wife, Steve. You must forgive me. Take me back." "Why, Julie? Why bring back someone I will never trust again? Why give my children to someone who would jeopardize their emotional well-being over something as small as money?" "Then fuck you, Steve. When I get out, I will make sure you and your slut never see my children." I smiled and shook my head sadly. Now that it suited her, they were her children. "Oh, Julie, wake up and smell the dog shit. Unless you find some other idiot to post bail for you, you'll stay here until your trial. Then, according to my lawyer, the attack will almost certainly be punishable by imprisonment. You won't get the full 7 years under the statute, but even a suspended sentence will mean there will be no custody of the children." I watched the woman I once loved look terrible, realizing that instead of being there to bail her out and explain to the jailers that it was all a mistake, it was in my best interest to press charges using Karen as a witness to keep her here. Here, which put her at the back of the line for money and lawyers, not to mention any post-divorce benefits. The sight was not pleasant. Gone was the arrogance based on the assumption that she would soon come out to subject me to suffering as a cuckold. In its place was the sudden realization that she should have used the time she spent threatening to humiliate me, to beg me to help her out. Suddenly she began to look very, very bad. Should I tell her that what she witnessed between Karen and me was just a setup to provoke her? Will I follow my moral code at least until we are legally separated? Should I tell her that courts rarely impose custodial sentences for assault these days, especially if the rage was provoked, as in her case? Hell no. Let her fear of being locked up will be part of her punishment. After all, she committed 2 of the worst crimes in my book of laws. Ruined something beautiful between us and jeopardized the emotional well-being of our children, damage that I tried to minimize by spending almost all my efforts on it. Come on, Julie. Accept the fact that you gambled and lost. Now you're getting a divorce. Accept that you screwed up willingly, and maybe when you get out, girls will still want something to do with you. Get into a fight, and I'm pretty sure you'll lose them forever. In fact, I'll make sure of that. Goodbye, Julie. I loved you once." With these words, Steve stood up and walked to the barred door to the visitor's room. The guard released him, and without looking back, he headed to his car, smiling at the thought of the 3 beautiful girls waiting for him at home. Coming out of the punishment cell, Steve hurried to the car he arrived in, its driver laying on the hood, enjoying the late morning rays. "Hey, wake up. How did it go for you?" "About as you predicted. Threats, though she had a moral basis, blah, blah, blah. Well, now she knows where she stands with me. You know, overall it was very calming, just like you said. Thank you, brother. What are older brothers for? Anyway, thanks, Dave. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.